Rome didn't fall to an army. It fell because of what happened in one bedroom, on one night, to one woman. A door opening in the dark. A woman, alone, a choice that shouldn't exist. Before the sun rose, that woman would be dead. Before the week ended, the oldest monarchy in Rome would collapse. And it all started because one prince thought he could do whatever he wanted. Her name was Lucretia, and what happened to her in the dark destroyed a kingdom in the light. This is not a story about politics. This is a story about what happens when power meets virtue and decides virtue has to break. When a guest becomes a predator. When honor becomes a weapon. When the only way a woman can prove her innocence is to die. If you think you know what revolution looks like, you haven't seen one that started with a single blade in a single hand. Ancient Rome had words for duty, for virtue, for honor, but they had no word for what they did to Lucretia. We still don't. We just have the blood she spilled and the kingdom that fell because of it. Before we enter that bedroom where everything changed, drop a comment with your city and country. Because once you see what honor culture can force someone to do, what power thinks it can take, and what happens when private tragedy becomes public rage, you will never look at Roman history the same way again. Rome in 509 BC wasn't the republic you read about in textbooks. Rome was a monarchy where kings ruled. The Tarquin family sat on the throne, and like most royal families who'd held power too long, they'd started believing the rules didn't apply to them. The current king was Lucius Tarquinius Superbus. Superbus means proud, arrogant. The name tells you everything. He'd seized power through violence, murdered his predecessor, ignored the Senate, ruled like a tyrant. Romans were getting tired of it and resentment was building. But resentment without a spark stays buried. The king had a son named Sextus Tarquinius, young, handsome, royal, the kind of man who'd never heard the word no and didn't plan to start. And then there was Lucretia. She was everything Roman culture claimed to value. Beautiful, yes, but that's not what mattered. She was virtuous, chaste, loyal. The kind of wife Roman men bragged about when they gathered to drink. Her husband was Collatinus, a military commander, a nobleman, a man who trusted his wife completely because she'd given him every reason to. Picture her, not as a painting or a statue. Picture her as a real woman, late 20s, managing a household while her husband is away at war, weaving. The traditional Roman wifely activity that proved you weren't idle, weren't tempted, weren't looking for trouble. She stayed home, honored her marriage, did everything right. The men were at war during a siege, the kind that drags on for weeks with nothing to do but wait and drink and talk. And one night, the princes and commanders started arguing about whose wife was most virtuous, whose wife was most loyal. The kind of argument drunk men have when they're bored and far from home. Someone suggested a test. Let's go home right now, unannounced, and see what our wives are doing when they don't know we're watching. So they rode back to Rome in the middle of the night for surprise visits, checking on their wives like they're inspecting property. Most of the wives were at parties, drinking, socializing, having lives, normal things. Nothing scandalous really, but not the image of perfect domestic virtue their husbands wanted. Then they reached Collatinus's house, Lucretia's house, and there she was, late at night, sitting with her servants, weaving and working. Exactly what a proper Roman wife should be doing. Collatinus felt a surge of pride, and Sextus Tarquinius looked. He looked at this beautiful, virtuous woman who'd just proven she was everything Roman honor culture valued, and something twisted in his mind. He didn't see virtue to respect. He saw a challenge to break. Think about what that means. He saw a woman being good and thought, I want to ruin that. The men returned to camp. The siege continued. Days passed, and Sextus couldn't stop thinking about Lucretia, about her virtue, about breaking it, about proving that even the most perfect Roman wife could be dishonored. And then he went back, alone this time. Collatinus, her husband, was still at war. There were no witnesses, no one who could stop him, just a prince, arriving at the house of his father's loyal commander. A guest seeking hospitality. Imagine being Lucretia when he arrives at her door. Your husband's friend, a prince, someone you have to welcome because Roman hospitality isn't optional. You invite him in, give him food, give him a room. You do everything custom demands because that's what virtuous women do. They follow the rules. He's charming and polite, everything a royal guest should be. The servants see nothing wrong, because why would they? He's the king's son, their master's friend. This is normal. The house settles for the night, servants to their quarters, Lucretia to her room. She's alone, because her husband is at war, and there's nothing unusual about that. Roman women managed households alone most of the time. She goes to bed, and then he comes to her room. Picture it. You're asleep in your own house, in your own bed, and you wake up to find a man standing over you. Not just any man, but a prince, your husband's friend. A guest you welcomed into your home, and he has a sword. Now imagine what goes through your mind in that moment. Confusion, fear, disbelief. This can't be happening. This is wrong. He's a guest. There are rules, there are laws, there's honor. But his sword is very real. You're alone, and no one's coming. Sextus doesn't pretend this is romance. He doesn't seduce, he threatens. The sword is clear: submit or die. Simple transaction in his mind. Choice for a virtuous Roman woman. Die rather than be dishonored. That's what the stories say. That's what honor demands. But Sextus is smarter than that. He knows Roman honor culture better than anyone and knows exactly what matters to a woman like Lucretia. And he adds one more element to his threat. If you resist, I'll kill you. And then I'll kill one of your male slaves. And I'll put his naked body next to yours, and I'll tell everyone I found you in bed with him, that I caught you in adultery, that I killed you both to preserve your husband's honor. He's not just threatening her life, but her reputation, her honor. The one thing Roman culture says is more important than life itself. If she dies fighting, she dies virtuous as a victim, mourned and honored. If she dies with a slave's body next to hers, she dies branded as an adulteress, shamed forever. Her family shamed, her husband shamed. Everything she valued destroyed. Think about the cruelty of that choice. Think about the calculation. He's weaponizing the exact honor system that defines her, using her virtue against her, turning her morality into a trap. She can die now and be remembered as an adulteress, or she can submit and maybe find some way to survive this with her reputation intact. What would you do in the dark, with a sword at your throat, with your entire identity as a virtuous woman being used to force your compliance? She submits, not because she wants to, not because she's weak, but because in that moment, with those options, it's the only choice that doesn't guarantee everything she is gets destroyed. He forces himself honor in her own bed, in her own house, where he's a guest, where she welcomed him with hospitality and trust. And then he leaves, goes back to camp like nothing happened, returns to the war, to his father, to his privilege. And Lucretia is left alone in that bed, in that room, in the aftermath of what happened. Imagine the hours after he leaves. The sun hasn't risen yet, and you're alone. Your body is evidence of something you didn't want, didn't invite, couldn't stop, and you're already thinking ahead, already calculating because this isn't over. You're a Roman woman and you know the culture you live in. You know what people will say. You know the questions they'll ask. Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you fight harder? Why didn't you die rather than submit? You know that your virtue, the thing you've built your entire life around, is now suspect. You know that no matter what you say, some people will whisper that you wanted it, that you encouraged it, that you're lying. You know that the system that should protect you will question you instead. And you know something else, something darker. You know that Sextus is a prince, that his father is king, that your husband is a commander who serves that king, that speaking up means accusing royalty, that justice is a fantasy when power is on the other side. So what do? In the dark, in the hours before dawn, when you're bleeding and broken and the man who did this is probably asleep, unpunished, some women would stay silent, bury it, live with it, try to forget. But Lucretia isn't most women. She spent her whole life being virtuous, following every rule, doing everything right, and it didn't protect her. The system failed. Honor failed. Hospitality failed. Everything she believed in failed, and that failure is about to burn Rome to the ground. Morning comes. Lucretia doesn't wash, doesn't change clothes, doesn't hide the evidence. Instead, she sends urgent messages to her father and her husband. She's about to tell them something that will destroy her in their eyes, might destroy her in their minds, will definitely destroy the life she had. But she's going to speak anyway. Her father arrives first. Spurius Lucretius, a nobleman, a man of honor. He finds his daughter disheveled, distraught, clearly traumatized, and he's already afraid, already thinking the worst, but not the right worst. Then Calapnis arrives, Lucretia's husband, and he's brought a friend named Lucius Junius Brutus. They don't know why they're here, just that Lucretia demanded their presence, that something is desperately wrong. The men entered her room, all of them, because she wanted witnesses. This isn't a private confession. This is testimony. And Lucretia, dishonored and broken, but still thinking strategically, still understanding Roman culture perfectly, still trying to control the only thing she has left, which is the narrative, she speaks. Imagine standing in that room. Imagine being her husband. Imagine seeing this woman you love, this woman you've always known as the model of virtue, and hearing her say the words she's about to say. I've been dishonored. Not the word we would use today. Romans didn't have a word that centered the victim. Violated, corrupted, stained. Even the language places the shame on her. She tells them everything. Sextus Tarquinius, the prince, the guest, the sword, the threat, the choice that wasn't a choice, the slave, the adultery lie, the calculated cruelty. She tells them she's innocent, that her mind is pure even if her body has been dishonored, that she didn't want this, didn't invite it, couldn't stop it. And then she says something that echoes across 2,000 years, something that reveals how deeply broken the system is. My body has been dishonored, but my mind is innocent. I absolve myself of sin, but not of punishment. Listen to those words again. She absolves herself of sin because she knows she's innocent, knows she did nothing wrong, but not of punishment. Because in Roman honor culture, a woman who has been violated is still seen as a corrupted woman, even if it wasn't her fault, even if she was threatened, even if she had no choice, the stain is still there. And Lucretia, virtuous Lucretia who followed every rule, knows that the only way to prove her innocence is to die. That's what honor demands. That's what the culture requires. In that world, a woman whose honor has been taken can only restore it through death. Think about how sick that is. Think about a system that forces a victim to take her own life just to prove she never wanted what was done to her. Her father is weeping. Her husband is weeping. They're telling her, no, you're innocent. You did nothing wrong. You don't have to do this. But she's not listening to them. She's listening to Rome, to the honor culture that has defined her entire life, to the voice in her head that says a corrupted woman, even an innocent one, cannot live. She looks at them, at these men she loves, and she says the words that will destroy a kingdom. Avenge me. And then, before anyone can stop her, before anyone can take the blade from her hand, she drives it into her chest. She doesn't scream, doesn't hesitate, doesn't give them time to intervene. She just strikes and falls. Her husband catches her body as she collapses, dark stains spreading across her clothes, life leaving her eyes. And the last thing she sees is his face, shocked, horrified, devastated. She dies in his arms, this virtuous woman, this perfect wife, this victim who became a sacrifice to honor's cruel demands. And in that moment, in that room, with her blood on their hands and her final words in their ears, something breaks in those men. Something shifts, something ignites. Lucretia wanted them to avenge her. She wanted Sextus punished. But Brutus, standing there holding her body, looking at the cost of princely privilege and royal impunity, he understands something bigger. This isn't about one crime. This isn't about one prince. This is about a system where princes can do this, where kings protect their sons, where women have to die to prove their innocence, where virtue means nothing against power. Brutus pulls the blade from Lucretia's chest. It's stained dark, still warm, and he holds it up, shows it to the other men, and makes an oath that will echo through Roman history. He swears over her that he will destroy the monarchy, that Rome will never have kings again, that this will never happen to another woman because some royal prince thought he could take whatever he wanted. And then he does something that will haunt history than most textbooks will ever teach you. The Republic was better than the monarchy. Democracy is better than tyranny. These things are true, but they were built on Lucretia's blood, and she never got to vote in the system she died to create. That's the truth behind the founding myth. That's the cost nobody counts. That's what they don't tell you when they celebrate the birth of Roman democracy. One woman, one night, one choice that shouldn't have existed. One death that changed everything except the thing that mattered most. The thing that would have let Lucretia live.
And then he does something that will haunt the story forever. Something that uses Lucretia's body one more time. Something that proves even in death, even in revolution, women's bodies are still political tools. He carries her body into the Roman Forum. Picture it, the city center, the heart of Rome. And here comes Brutus, carrying a dead woman, her stained clothes visible to everyone, her body proof of what princes do when no one stops them. He doesn't hide her, he displays her, shows Rome what Sextus Tarquinius did, shows them what kings allow, shows them a virtuous woman dead, because that was the only way she could prove she didn't want what was done to her. The crowd gathers, hundreds, then thousands of Romans staring at Lucretia's body, at this woman they knew, this woman who was famous for her virtue, now dead, dishonored, destroyed. And Brutus speaks. He tells them everything, the crime, her death, the final words. But he's not just talking about avenging Lucretia. He's talking about avenging every woman who has to live in fear of powerful men, every family that has to bow to tyrants, every Roman who has watched kings break laws with impunity. The crowd erupts, not in mourning, but in rage. Because here's what you need to understand about revolution. It doesn't start with political theory. It starts with a story, a personal story, a story that makes abstract oppression concrete, that gives tyranny a face, that shows people exactly what they're living under. Lucretia's body is that story. Her blood is that proof. And Rome, looking at her, decides it's done with kings. The next hours are chaos. The crowd becomes a mob. The mob becomes an army. They march on the palace. They demand the king abdicate. They demand Sextus be handed over for punishment. The Tarquins see thousands of enraged Romans demanding justice. They realize Lucretia's death has done what years of oppression never could. It has united the city against them. The king flees. Sextus flees. The entire royal family abandons Rome in the night, chased out by a revolution that started in a bedroom and exploded in a forum. And Rome, for the first time in its history, is kingless. They establish the Republic right there. That same day, 2 consuls instead of 1 king. Brutus is one of them. Collatinus, Lucretia's husband, is the other. Both elected, both accountable, both serving limited terms. The monarchy is over. Kings will never rule Rome again. And all of it, every bit of it, started because one prince thought he could do this to one woman and get away with it. Lucretia got her revenge. Rome avenged her. Sextus Tarquinius died in exile, killed by enemies he'd made, dying knowing he destroyed his own family's power by refusing to control himself for one night. But here's the question that haunts this story. Here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Did Lucretia win? She destroyed the monarchy. She changed Rome forever. She became a legendary symbol of virtue and resistance. Her name lived on for centuries, still lives on today, but she's dead. She took her own life. She had to die to prove her innocence, had to collapse in front of her father and husband to make them believe her, had to become a body before Rome would listen. And even then, even in revolution, even in the founding myth of the Roman Republic, her body was used, displayed, turned into a symbol. She wanted Sextus punished. Brutus gave her a political revolution. She wanted justice. They gave her a founding myth. Was that what she wanted, or was she used again? This time by the men who loved her, who turned her tragedy into their political opportunity. Think about it. Rome got its republic. Brutus got power. Collatinus got to be consul. The Tarquins got overthrown. And Lucretia got to be dead. She's the hero of the story, the catalyst, the reason Rome changed, but she didn't live to see it, didn't benefit from it, didn't get to enjoy the freedom she died for. The system that forced her to prove innocence through her own death was still broken. Honor culture didn't change. Women were still expected to die rather than live in disgrace. Victims were still blamed. Virtue was still weaponized. Rome just did it without a king. You want to know what's darkest about this story? It's not the crime. It's not even her death. It's that Rome made Lucretia a hero for doing exactly what the broken system demanded, for taking her own life to preserve honor, for dying to prove innocence. They celebrated her for submitting to cultural pressure. They built her a legend around her compliance with the very rules that killed her, and they called it virtue. If you made it this far, you've seen something most history classes skip. They teach Lucretia as the noble beginning of Roman democracy, the virtuous woman whose sacrifice birthed the Republic. They don't teach her as a victim forced to take her own life by honor culture. They don't teach her as a woman whose body was used twice, once by the man who attacked her, once by revolutionaries who needed a symbol. They don't teach the cost, just the result. Drop a comment if you see it now. If you understand that revolution can be built on suffering, that democracy can start with a woman's blood, that the stories we celebrate often hide the bodies we'd rather not see. And if you think the Republic fixed Rome's problems, if you think establishing democracy made them more civilized, you haven't seen how they turned women's executions into public entertainment. We made a video about that. Fair warning, it's darker than this one. Links below if you want to see just how far Rome's cruelty went. Lucretia changed Rome, but Rome didn't change for Lucretia. It changed because her death was useful, because her sacrifice made a powerful foundation, because her story could be shaped into the foundation myth a new government needed. But somewhere in that bedroom, in those hours before dawn when she was alone and wronged and deciding whether to speak or stay silent, Lucretia made a choice that had nothing to do with politics or founding myths or revolutions. She chose to speak, knowing it would cost her everything, knowing the system would demand her death, knowing she'd become a symbol instead of a person. She spoke anyway. That's the real story. Not that she died for Rome, but that she refused to die silently, that she made them hear her, that she forced them to see what had been done to her. And maybe that's the only victory available when the system is designed to destroy you. You make them acknowledge it. You make them see the cost. You make your death mean something, even if the something isn't what you'd choose, if you had better options. Lucretia didn't want to be a founding myth. She wanted justice. She wanted the man who attacked her punished. She wanted her life back. She got none of those things, but she got heard. And Rome, listening, burned its monarchy to the ground. 2,000 years later, we're still telling her story, still saying her name, still remembering what was done to her and what she did about it. The crime didn't end with her silence. The shame didn't make her disappear. The honor culture that forced her death didn't erase her completely. She's still here, in every retelling, in every classroom where they teach about the founding of the Republic, in every moment someone asks whether the cost was worth it. Lucretia died, but her story didn't. And maybe, in a world that wanted her silent and forgotten, that's the closest thing to winning she could get. The Republic lasted nearly 500 years, 5 centuries of Roman history built on the night Lucretia died. Every consul who served, every law that was passed, every battle fought in the Republic's name, all of it traced back to that bedroom, that choice, that blade. Rome remembered her, built statues, wrote poems, made her immortal in art and literature, held her up as the perfect example of Roman virtue, and never, not once, questioned the system that demanded her death. That's what makes this story so dark. Not that it happened, but that Rome celebrated it, made it beautiful, turned trauma into legend, turned her death into virtue, turned a victim's forced choice into the foundation of their government, and called it progress. If you understand that now, if you see how Rome could build something new while keeping the same broken pieces, you understand more about Roman history